Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in. Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Ending Body Burnout Show. Today we have a Connect the Dots.
Yeah, if you're new to the podcast, every now and then we'll do a Connect the Dots episode, which is essentially taking a listener's case and putting our detective hats on and talking about what might be happening underneath the surface, both physically and also metaphysically. So today we had doing an episode around autonomic nervous system dysregulation, that is an actual condition, POTS and vestibular migraines. So a very big thank you to Amy for sending this one in. Just FYI, especially if we always do this disclaimer at the start of a Connect the Dots episode, but this is not, first and foremost for the listener who sent this in, this isn't advice giving. Really, we would need to sit down with you for a 90-minute one-on-one Connect the Dots session in order to then be able to gauge what is actually going on and where to go to in terms of testing and treatment and that sort of stuff. So, and also for any listener who might have similar symptoms, we're not saying that this is exactly what's happening underneath the surface. This is where having a deep conversation with the person in real life is going to give us more dots on the page to connect. So essentially, when people send in a Connect the Dots case, they fill in a little form that we have to submit their case to the podcast. We try and keep it quite short and sweet so it's not overwhelming to fill in, but it also means that there's a lot of unsaid data points that could make me think something completely different to what we have presented in the episode today. So really we're just taking the information that we have, more so from the place of educational purposes and inspirational purposes too, looking at these symptoms, these conditions in a different way to what you might have been looking at them.
Boom diggity.
Okay. So, also FYI, if you want to submit your own case for a Connect the Dots, there is a link in the show notes where you can get sent to that application form and we will hopefully present your case on the podcast in the future. Okay, so I love to dive in first of all to just breaking down what symptoms this person is experiencing, when it started, what they've tried so far, and then we'll take it from there in terms of what we think is going on and where to look at next. So Amy has said that she has been diagnosed with autonomic nervous system dysregulation, showing up as POTS and vestibular migraine type symptoms. So specifically those symptoms are showing up as non-spinning dizziness. I'm going to just rattle off a whole heap of symptoms. Because again, I'm always interested in the different types of symptoms in the presentation that can give us clues as to what's happening at a metaphysical level and also with the body system. So there's dizziness, temperature fluctuations, anxiety, chest pain, internal vibrations, mood problems, visual disturbances, nausea, diarrhea, brain fog, lightheadedness, feeling like she's walking on a trampoline all the time or when it shows up. Occasional palpitations, skipped heartbeats, tinnitus, and waking up early around 4 to 5 a.m. So a lot of symptoms. My heart goes out to this lady because that is not an enjoyable bucket load of symptoms to be experiencing day in and day out. What Amy did mention though is that the symptoms aren't always there, and they don't all show up at once together. So she says they're fluctuating and sometimes they come in different groupings. So that's an interesting piece to the puzzle, which is really common when there's nervous system dysregulation. So for example, sometimes people can have like real severe gut issues, and there's some really nasty pathogens that are flaring that up. A lot of the times those symptoms are chronically there, especially when there's like a really bad case of SIBO. But when we're dealing more with nervous system dysregulation, which can then send signals to different body systems, a lot of these symptoms can show up really randomly and in different groupings. So it is a clear presentation of what she's been diagnosed with. And knowing that a lot of this is coming from nervous system dysregulation means that in terms of treatment, we can actually start getting really specific with how to move forward. So she said that this started in September 2021, 3 weeks after having the vaccine for COVID. And she remembered feeling ill on the day all of a sudden. No one else in the family got ill from it. And for a week after, she felt well again, but then suddenly she felt worse and has been up and down ever since. So it sounds like there's a bit of a vaccine injury or inflammatory response that set that off, but I'll dig into that a bit deeper in a second. But even before the vaccine, a lot of stuff was leading up to this in terms of stress. So there was COVID, there were lockdowns, homeschooling. I know a lot of people just had an accumulation of stress during this time. This lady was trying to complete schooling of her own as well as homeschooling the kids. And there was a lot of stress and pressure, and her husband was still working. So although, bringing money into the family, didn't feel like she had a lot of support inside the home. So, this tells us that there was a perfect storm already happening. A lot of chronic stress, pressure, role overload, and then add in a physical trigger, the vaccine. It sounds like that was the last straw that broke the camel's back, that tipped her system over the edge and then erupted into symptoms. She also says that she has tried all the Western health doctors. She has even been referred out to an infectious disease specialist. She's tried naturopathic care supplements, rest counseling, deep breathing, journaling. At the end of the list, when she was filling in the form, she said there has also been lots of crying and doubting herself. So it sounds like she has been trying a lot of things to try and bring her body and her mind back on track. She's been seeking help. She's been trying. I want to acknowledge that. One, personally, I know, I had 10 years of that, trying to get to the root and trying all the things. It can get really exhausting. It can get really frustrating. It also shows that there's strength and there's stamina when you're still trying. It can get to a point where it can kind of feel a bit defeating, especially if you are still struggling after trying a lot of things. I think I'm just like kind of sending empathy, but also showing that it's quite normal to feel this doubt after having a chronic issue and trying a lot of things and things not improving. Okay. Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay, cool. So in our practice, when we think about body burnout, which comes after a prolonged amount of chronic stress and trauma and physical imbalances, and the body starts burning out, and at some point symptoms start screaming at you to try and get your attention. There's two main causes behind why the body burns out. So one is physical inflammatories, the other is metaphysical inflammatories. So we're going to dig into both of those. A question that we get a lot from a new client or someone who's kind of interested in working with us, or maybe just a friend having lunch with us at the cafe, is, I have this symptom. Do you think it's coming from the mind or the body? Is it metaphysical or physical? And our answer to that is it's never one or the other. It's one and the other. So if we're going to treat the body. We need to treat the whole self: physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, because you can't separate all these different pieces and parts of you. So in terms of physical body systems that I would be thinking about is, well, first of all, before I go into the body systems, I want to talk a little bit more about autonomic nervous system dysfunction, POTS, vestibular migraines, these really common conditions that come out of a nervous system that is feeling very activated and dysregulated. So POTS, for those who are not aware, is a condition where your autonomic nervous system, so the part of your nervous system that controls automatic functions like your heart rate, your blood pressure, digestion, temperature regulation, stops functioning properly or at an optimal level. And the autonomic nervous system has two branches. So one branch is the sympathetic nervous system, that's fight, flight, part of the nervous system. And then you've got your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, if that's functioning optimally, that's where you will feel like you can rest, you can digest, you can heal, you're relaxed, you're calm. And then there's another branch to that, which is which can lead to something called dorsal vagal or functional freeze. So when you have things like POTS, vestibular migraines, a dysregulated autonomic nervous system, essentially what is happening is these branches aren't communicating properly with each other. So your body can't regulate blood flow very effectively, or your heart rate or your blood pressure isn't functioning optimally. Especially like from a POTS condition when you change positions or you're under stress. And so that's where a lot of the dizziness, lightheadedness, temperature fluctuations, changes in heart regulation, even digestion can start showing up. So there is a bunch of things that can trigger a dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system. So stress is going to be a really big one, and stress can come in all shapes and sizes. Right, it could be childhood stuff that your body is still carrying on to, beliefs that you have about yourself. There could be current day life stresses. So stress is a really big one. But then you can have things like viral infections, pathogens in the gut, nutritional deficiencies, mast cell activation, and in some cases, like for this lady, vaccine injuries as well. So it's not necessarily that the vaccine causes every single person to develop this condition. There's always going to be some sort of underlying imbalance that occurs, and then that physical thing that you put into your body just adds more stress to a bucket that is almost overflowing. So so specifically around post-vaccination reactions in those individuals that are susceptible, because there's already imbalances brewing away below the surface, what can happen is it can trigger an immune response that doesn't shut off properly. So basically the immune system gets activated and it's sending out different proteins like cytokines, different antibodies that lead to an inflammatory storm that doesn't leave the body after the vaccine ingredients leave the body. And so this can lead to things like chronic inflammation, autoimmune reactions, mast cell activation, and a thing called cytokine storm. So if you've done some research around COVID and also COVID vaccinations, you've probably heard this term before. Basically, this is where your immune system releases unusually large amounts of cytokines. And these are little small proteins that are important to cell signaling. And essentially, they help to signal to your immune system to fight off a pathogen, a virus. It can also help with rebuilding tissue cells and all that sort of stuff. So when this system gets overactivated and it's sending out a lot of cytokines, and which essentially keeps your immune system taxed and hypervigilant, it can then continue signaling or creating symptoms that become chronic, if that makes sense. So it's no longer an acute immune reaction, it can become chronic. Okay, so some lab tests or body systems that I would be thinking about. I mean, from a medical point of view, if your doctor hasn't looked at full inflammatory markers like CRP, ESR, calprotectin, or autoimmune markers like ANA, thyroid antibodies, rheumatoid factor, I would definitely ask your GP to look at those. Most of the time, a good GP would have already done that blood work already, and it might show that all the markers are normal. If they are, then it's like, all right, we got to take a functional approach. But even if any of those markers are still showing up, my question always is why. It's like, okay, cool. We can clearly see that there's an autoimmune response happening, and or there's high levels of inflammation. But just having that data doesn't lead to a solution. So we need to dig deeper to figure out what's causing the immune system to produce inflammation in the first place, or what's still underneath the surface. So I definitely think about looking at the adrenals and the HPA axis. The reason for this is knowing that leading up to the COVID vaccination, this listener had a lot of stress happening, as did a lot of people during COVID. So potentially the adrenals might have been overworking already. Maybe they were quite depleted, and when that happens, it means that your body isn't able to regulate your stress hormones very effectively anymore. And if you're not regulating your stress hormones very effectively, then it puts your nervous system into a state of dysregulation. So the nervous system might have already been dysregulated, highly likely that it was. Then add in the COVID vaccination, and it just led to more of an inflammatory storm that then led to a diagnosed condition. So definitely looking at the adrenals, because if we can help to support physically the adrenal glands so that the stress hormones are functioning better, then it's going to help. It will have a nice ripple effect into supporting the nervous system to regulate better. A really key thing that makes me think about cortisol and adrenal issues is the waking up at 4 to 5 a.m. It sounds like sleep-wake cycle is a bit out of whack. Very common to wake up in those early morning hours when cortisol is spiking at the wrong time. Along with that too, I would think about the brain and neurotransmitters. So some key neurotransmitters that we test for in our practice using urine, which is pretty cool, is dopamine, adrenaline, and serotonin. So when there's been a lot of chronic stress, the body usually produces a lot more adrenaline, and it's kind of similar to cortisol. So it's your stress brain chemical that gets activated when you're under stress. And when that's activated too much, the adrenaline can actually start depleting in terms of the neurotransmitter, but it also can suppress the production of dopamine and serotonin. And when these neurotransmitters are depleted, it's another way that the nervous system becomes dysregulated. Like essentially your neurotransmitters are all connected, your brain is connected to your nervous system. And so if these neurotransmitters are out of whack, your nervous system tends to be out of whack as well. The other thing with the brain, and what I would look at testing alongside the neurotransmitters, would be brain inflammation. So this can be a common functional reason as to why someone develops something like post-vaccination condition, or even things like long-haul COVID, because the inflammatory cytokine storm that can occur when you either, have the vaccination or get the infection can trigger inflammation in the brain, and that inflammation can remain there. It doesn't always self-heal acutely. It can become a chronic issue, and so then, it's really addressing that inflammation in the brain. So the brain can be sending the correct signals down to the nervous system and to the rest of the body. Next area I would be thinking about would be gut health. So talking about this cytokine storm, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. If it did, every single person who had the vaccination or even got COVID would be chronically ill, and not everyone is. So there's always things, pre-existing imbalances that are creating the perfect storm that explode basically when you might get something like the COVID vaccine. So we've talked about stress already, but another thing that could have been underlying there, been an issue, maybe a hidden issue, might have been some gut imbalances. So if you have a lot of pathogens, for example, so parasites, candida, bacterial pathogens, these are pathogens are spitting out little inflammatory metabolites. And potentially, like, the body is like not doing so well, but it's clearing that enough to not get full-on symptoms from it. But then as that stress bucket increases, and add in the COVID vaccine, and there's more inflammation in the body, it's kind of like that inflammation load just goes through the roof. But in order to resolve the problem so that the symptoms disappear, you may also need to look at other reasons or other inflammatory things that are happening in the body. And in terms of gut pathogens, that's a really common one. Same with leaky gut. If someone has leaky gut or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, this can just add to the inflammatory pool that's already happening in the body. And there are some key symptoms too. So this lady mentioned diarrhea and nausea, which makes me think that it's like, yeah, there's probably something physically going on in the gut as well. And it's not just the nervous system causing those symptoms in the gut. I mean, it might be, but would be part of the investigatory process, would be to look at any other inflammatory physical imbalances that could be contributing to how you're feeling. And then two more things, like nutritional deficiencies could definitely be part of the picture. So if there had been a prolonged time of chronic stress will deplete nutrients. Also, the immune activation will deplete nutrients as well. And then it becomes this cyclical issue where, maybe the nutrients were actually okay initially, or maybe they weren't because they're starting to deplete with stress. Add in an inflammatory experience in the body, and then the body is using those nutrients more so to try and self-heal. But if the nutrients get too low and you're not filling the body back up with food, which can be really hard when you're burning the nutrients really fast, then it can create more symptoms and more dysfunction in the body. So some key nutrients I'd be thinking about in regards to nervous system, and immune health would be your B vitamins, magnesium, vitamin D, iron, zinc, selenium, CoQ10, omega-3s. And there is a beautiful test, it's called a Nutristat test that we run that looks at both the blood and the urine, or it uses those as specimens. And basically it's a full panel that looks at almost every nutrient in the body, from vitamins to minerals to fatty acids to amino acids, even looks at heavy metals, hormones. It's kind of like a really good all-rounder. And one last body system, detox pathways. So anyone who has issues with a chemical that is put into the body and then they've never felt the same since, I would always think about detox pathways. I'd want to run a test to look at the health of the liver, how well you're detoxing. Again, it's likely that if there are detox issues, that this imbalance was already pre-existing. And then when you add in something like the vaccine, it just puts more pressure on the liver and detox pathways. It's kind of like, now we need to detox from that. And we also need to detox from all the inflammatory cytokines and maybe like histamines that are being produced because of this condition. It can then send your liver to overwhelm, and it can then turn quite sluggish, which then means that as you live your life and you're just exposed to, regular everyday toxins, as we all are, your ability to be able to clear those gets compromised, and it can then impact body systems more so. Okay, a lot of information there. Let's get to the metaphysical side of healing. So we've covered the physical body systems, but remember, it's not one or the other. It's one and the other. So like our big question when clients get their lab tests back are why. It's like, why did this happen in the first place? Because if we just throw a bunch of supplements and a diet to try and heal the imbalances, but you're not addressing the deeper reasons as to why the body system's burnt out in the first place, then you'll only get short-lived results, if any at all, especially if there's nervous system dysregulation. It's really hard to heal that with a supplement alone. So do you have any, I've got like a bunch of things that I can talk about, but just from what I've shared so far, do you have any thoughts from a metaphysical point of view?
My favorite one is this. This might sound pointy and a little bit pokey, but some of the things that this listener has mentioned are her issues. Just because somebody has the situations and experiences that are going on doesn't mean universally everyone has to be stressed and disrupted and frustrated and overwhelmed and have their nervous system corrupted and broken down. So that's what I mean by a you issue.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Well, it's a good example because I feel like I had a similar experience to Amy during COVID. Like I felt like the world was going to end, and that was essentially my third body burnout where my symptoms exploded yet again. And I had to go deeper into the metaphysical healing. Whereas you...
Party!
You loved it. You thought COVID and the lockdowns and homeschooling and
I loved it. It was amazing.
Closing doors to your business. It was like awesome.
So what's the differentiating factor, and this is where you can turn it around. So, okay, so what are the stories that we're telling yourself that we tell ourselves in that moment, in that COVID time? For me, it was like I could go outside, smell the beautiful Tasmanian air, and guess what I couldn't hear? Traffic. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live in a zombie apocalypse where no cars are driving? That's what it was like. And I just thought it was the best thing in the world. Stories. So therefore, what stories are you telling yourself, Amy, about yourself, and are you believing to be true? Why is this such a hard thing for you to go through? It does sound challenging. I'm not being naive, but why is it challenging for you? Why do you find this hard? And that's my big that thing right there around stories is usually it's the missing piece in healthcare. It's stories that people tell themselves about themselves.
Yeah, and when we use, story is a bit of an abstract word. If we add in a bit of, I guess, like neuroscience or some science to it, is the stories are being born out of subconscious patterns that you're running, past events that you haven't metabolized and processed and cleared, and unconscious core beliefs that you have about yourself. Yeah. That's where the story is coming from. So like the listener did identify with some patterns which can give us some clues. And as I'm reading through these patterns, like if I'm thinking about the COVID experience through my lens before I really addressed my own stories, it's like, we were running pretty similar patterns. So anxious, worrying, overwhelmed, stressed out, overdoing, workaholic, rushing, hurrying, easily offended, defensive, overreacting, catastrophizing. So you could imagine if a person was running these patterns, COVID would feel like the tiger is about to eat you right now, because all of a sudden the world has changed. Your world has changed. Kids aren't at school anymore, so that's like more stuff that you have to do, and you're trying to study yourself, and your husband's away from work and he's not there to support you. So if you're already running these underlying overdoing, busy, hurry, overwhelmed, stressed out patterns,
and then the situation stretches you just that little bit more,
then it's kind of like, again, it's actually probably not even the COVID vaccination, it's the whole situation was the last straw on the camel's back, and then the body exploded because these symptoms, and I say this with love, they are loving messages trying to get your attention. Not just trying to get your attention around imbalances in the body, but deeper imbalances in your unconscious mind. It's like, you know what, we're done. We're exhausted. I'm so done running this pattern of overdoing and trying so hard and trying to be doing everything for everyone else and like being a perfectionist, I'm not saying that you're running all these patterns, but they're kind of like similar ones that can show up. And then at some point, the body just says no. It's like if conscious mind is not saying no, not giving yourself permission to say no, the unconscious and the body will say no for you. And then it's like, bang, now we're going to give you vestibular migraines so that you can't even walk properly anymore. You have to lie down in bed because if you don't, you're vomiting and you have diarrhea. And so, yeah, these patterns are massive. And it sounds like if these patterns were there already, it then creates an even more inflammatory storm when you have chronic issues.
Yeah.
We see this a lot with clients who have been trying to heal in the same way that they got burnt out in the first place, where it's like, quick, got to do more, got to go faster, not doing enough. What's the next thing? Catastrophizing. This isn't working. Victim mentality. It's like, oh, far out. Maybe my body's broken. Maybe I can't do this. And so it just keeps you trapped in this never-ending cycle. You can be trying so hard to heal your body, doing all the things, but if you're doing it, if these patterns are driving the way that you're trying to heal, it just creates more trauma. It creates more dysfunction, and your nervous system stays stuck, dysregulated.
You know, in Shrek goes, ogres have layers. Ogres are like onions. They've got layers. You know that one. I often think sometimes when we're peeling back these layers of the metaphysical and the physical, it's hard to get to the root of things when you're covered up in these protective layers, these mechanisms. So, it's one and the other, not one or the other. So just take these things, take these layers, peel them off, bit at a time. Work on these stories that you tell yourself and these beliefs that you've got about yourself. Work on the body systems. Work on this stuff, and you just bit by bit. Eventually, you've stripped away all these protective layers, and then you just feel a little bit safer. And it can take time. Our ending body burnout method is a 6-month accelerator. It's quicker to get to the root cause doing the accelerator than leaving it to fluke alone. Some of our clients will take longer than 6 months to peel back all the layers, don't they? And some aren't willing to do that and to go longer. Some are willing, and we see some of our clients peel back layers for months after they've started with us. So however long your journey will take is how long your journey takes. Whatever your journey brings up for you, it brings up for you. So yeah, it's layers. Do this a little bit at a time.
Yeah. All right. Look, if you want to listen to a client story who had very similar symptoms, so Grace, it was episode 79. I'll put it in the show note links. She was diagnosed with vestibular migraines, but also the doctors were kind of like, we're not really sure what to categorize you with, but so many of those symptoms that we listed earlier with this listener's case is very similar to what Grace was experiencing. And a lot of those patterns are very similar to the patterns that Grace was running. So I think that this listening to Grace's episode would be a really nice part 2 of what we covered here today. And when we interviewed Grace, we really went into like, well, what were the steps? Not only the experience of having these conditions, but she then very generously shared the steps that she took to heal both the physical body, to support the physical body. But most of the podcast episode is actually diving into what she did in order to rewire her nervous system, her brain, her neural pathways, reprogram deep beliefs that she had about herself, clearing trauma. She was someone who it wasn't textbook easy. It wasn't kind of like do this and do this and do this and you'll be well. She had a lot of up and downs, which also means she has a lot of learnings and insights to share. So that would be a great one to listen to off the back of listening to this podcast for those who are resonating with, symptomology that we've discussed today. And as I mentioned before, if you'd like to get your own case anonymously reviewed, in that you're not actually coming onto the podcast, we're just taking your data, then there is a link in the show notes to fill in the application form. Also, if you would love us to personally guide you through our holistic root cause approach, go down to the show notes as well. There is a link to our ending body burnout method. Doors open again February 2026, so you can pop your name down on the wait list. By doing that, you'll get first in, first best dressed. The first one-on-one will be a Connect the Dots initial consult with myself. And if you don't want to wait that long until February, if there's spots available in my calendar, sometimes there are, sometimes they're not, but I'll put the link in the show notes. You can book in for a standalone Connect the Dots to get the journey happening a bit sooner, so that when the doors open, you've started some lab tests, you're good to go with the deeper root cause healing.
Yeah.
So check all those out in the show notes, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.